Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur Lynch. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran currently attending Dartmouth College. My class year is 2023. Now, the big question is, how did I get to Dartmouth College? Well, I hope you guys have your popcorn because this is an unbelievable story. Um, I want to start this story actually about 2 years ago at the beginning of December 2018. I was about 70 something days into rehab, which was the longest I ever made it into rehab in the previous 10 years. I had a severe heroin addiction where I was living on the street. I was living in my cars. I was getting kicked out of my mother's, everywhere else I lived, getting arrested, felonies, going to jail, you name it. My arms are even missing veins. That's how bad it was. So I was 70 something days into my sobriety. I was doing really well. And at this rehab, they were very strict. Um, they didn't like your phone going off of class and stuff like that. And mine often did. And I ended up getting kicked out just for a number of infractions, not for using drugs, but just because the infractions kept building up. So I was devastated because that is the longest I ever made it, and the rehab for my heroin addiction over the past 10 years. So I remember the night perfect. It was the beginning of December, so it was really cold. I had to pack all my stuff in my car. I had no idea what I was going to do. My brother lived nearby in Brighton, Massachusetts, and so I decided to immediately go see him because he was the nearest family member to me. I showed up to his house crying my eyes out because I felt let down. I felt abandoned. I was doing so good with my sobriety, still doing good, haven't used. And I was just bawling my eyes out. I didn't know what to do with myself. So my brother, luckily, had just moved out of an apartment 6 months early. So he had six of his other apartments that he had. No one would take it. So naturally, he's like, Arthur, just to give you a start, you can move into this apartment. And I'm like, okay. He was going to give it to me for half price, 800 instead of 1600. So I figured, I had nowhere else to go. So, it was the best option for me at the time. So I moved into this apartment on Commonwealth Ave in Brighton, Massachusetts, bustling middle of the city, very much drove my anxiety through the roof. I moved in, and after I got moved in, I realized that, I'm only a couple months sober. I haven't lived a normal life in 10 years. And even though I'm sober, I had no idea how to go shopping. I had no idea how to talk to people. I had no idea how to live. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was just like in that apartment alone. It was a very dark and lonely time for me. So naturally, my brother knew this. And when he could, he would get me out of the house or out of the apartment. So one day, beginning of January 2019, he's like, Arthur, he's like, I got the day off. Where do you want to go? He knew he wanted to keep me busy. So I got thinking, and I was thinking of like natural history museums because since I was 6 years old, I've always wanted to be a scientist. I knew I was born to be a scientist. From day one, my enthusiasm about the world I live in the universe and just how it works, just, I've been obsessed with it. Animals, space, everything. So I got looking around. We don't live too far from Harvard, or I didn't live too far from Harvard, neither did he. So I saw the Harvard Museum of Natural History. And I'm like, very cool, not too far. It's Harvard, natural history, very cool. So we decided to go there. So we go to the Harvard Museum of Natural History. And we start looking around. They have great exhibits. And And I was specifically wanting to pay special attention to the bird exhibit because there was a bird I had in mind that I absolutely hoped they had. It's called the hooded pitui. And I was looking for this bird because it's one of the only poisonous birds in the world, like maybe one of 2 or 3 species. And it has the same toxin as one of the most toxic creatures in the world, the poison dart frog, batrachotoxin, a nerve toxin. So I wanted to see if they had this bird. I figured it's Harvard. They have this bird. They have to. And I was looking through the exhibit, especially the tropical Asian exhibit, because that's where the bird lives. And I didn't see it. They have a great exhibit, but I didn't see it. So after the exhibit, as we're leaving, I go up to the guy working there, and I'm like, "Hey, you guys got great exhibits here, but there's one thing I didn't see. I was looking for the hooded pitui. Do you know what kind of bird this is?" And this guy had no idea what I was talking about. This guy that was working at Harvard at the Natural History Museum, no idea what I was talking about. So a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do for a career. Maybe I still have a shot at following my passion. And so probably a couple days after that, I got thinking to myself, it was the beginning of January. School was about to start up everywhere, for the winter semester or spring semester. And I lived pretty close to Bunker Hill Community College in Boston. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sober. And maybe I could do it this time. Because all the other times I tried doing the school, I went to many. I was a drug addict. So I just couldn't finish. I couldn't stick it out. I knew I could do it, but I just didn't have the right state of mind. So I'm like, I'm going to try this again. I'm sober. Maybe it'll work out different this time. So it's literally a couple days before classes start. I'm so nervous to actually go through with this process, just to go into a hustling, bustling city school. Like, I didn't even know how to take care of myself yet. And I forced myself in, and I went to the veterans office, and the guy working there was very helpful, helped me set up my class schedule. I really didn't put much thought into the classes I would take. I needed, because I went to school so much before. I knew what credits I already had. So I'm like, okay, I need cell biology, maybe a couple math and stuff like that. Just get me started again. And then after I set that up, the first day of school rolls around. And I remember perfectly, it was a night class, cell biology. And it was a cold winter night, snow blowing around. And I show up to the parking lot. And after I pulled up, I could see everybody walking by, and I was just too scared to go inside. I just was not used to interacting with people. I was not used to being a normal human being, especially going to school. I lived on the street pretty much for 10 years using heroin. So, being a normal person was not in my repertoire. So I turned around and left. I didn't go to school that day, first day of school. And I got to thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm sober, and I've done that. I didn't want to give up. So I'm like, the next time class rolled around, I showed up. And this time I went in, and I went to my first class. So after I went to the first class, it kind of broke the ice for me. And so I started attending class frequently. And remember my cell biology class, I was very enthusiastic about that class because that's my area of, maybe not expertise, but it's what I'm truly passionate about. So I was always raising my hand. I was always interacting with the professor, stuff like that. And he saw that. And something very much surprised me. I was in lab one day about a month and a half into class, in the back, just, doing lab and stuff like that. And the professor walks up to me. Professor Mukherjee is his name. And he put his hand on my shoulder. And he's like, Arthur, he's like, I think you should do a Harvard internship. And when he said that, firstly, I was shocked, but secondly, I was like, wow, Harvard and me, that like, I was a heroin junkie 6 months ago. Heroin and Harvard do not go in the same sentence. That's immediately what I thought. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I thought. And he's like, no, really, I think you should look into this. And he gave me the name of this professor, this really old English professor. I shouldn't say really old, older English professor on the verge of retirement. He retired that year. Um, his name was Wick Sloan, and he sent me in this professor helps veterans transition over to these Harvard internships. So one day I go and talk to Wick. He's a very witty old man, very wise. He went to Williams College in Yale. Sat down. He told me about the internship, and as he was telling me, I'm like, okay, this seems pretty interesting. But in the back of my mind, I was still thinking, like, can I really do this? Like, I was living on the street like 6 months ago. This is just absolutely bonkers. This is crazy. So I applied, and then when it came time for the decisions coming out, I didn't get accepted right away, and that kind of angered me. I'm like, how could they turn me down? Like I really feel like I can do this. I felt disrespected. I felt let down like I was when I was kicked out of that rehab. I'm like, I ain't going to let that happen. So I was very pushy, and I kept emailing the director of the program. Sometimes she'd get back to me, sometimes she wouldn't. And when she didn't, I would double email her. Eventually, I think it got through. I was persistent enough. And 3 weeks after the internship started for everybody, she accepted me. She hooked me up with a mentor, and I ended up working in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, making microfluidic devices. So I started this internship June, end of June 2019, after my first semester at Bunker Hill. What was interesting about this internship was not just the internship itself, but the fact of where it was located. It was right across the street from that Harvard Museum of Natural History, where I went a couple months before that, and wasn't even in school at the time. So I was walking out of this internship, the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, every day, seeing that museum that I was at, that before I started school, it was like living in an alternate universe. I just thought that was so bizarre and so cool at the same time. So I continue with this internship, and then I give a presentation at the end, and it ended up going really well. And then that's when I realized, okay, that's one of the first times I realized I can really stick with this sobriety. I could really do stuff like this. So I went back to Bunker Hill that fall semester, but I stayed affiliated with Harvard. I ended up, I lived 5 minutes down the street from Harvard. So I decided to attend these seminars they have every Thursday in OEB, Department of Organismic and Evolutionary Biology, because that's what I want to do. I want to be an evolutionary biologist. So I wanted to surround myself with those people. And Harvard has some of the best biologists in the world, and they have speakers come from everywhere. So I went every Thursday, and I would see the speakers that would come, and I continued going to Bunker Hill at the same time. Now, about December 2019, after my second semester at Bunker Hill, I had to really start considering where I was going to go to school for a 4-year. You can't stay at community college forever because they're only 2-year schools. And my credits were racking up. And so I really didn't know how to start the process. And I'm like, I gotta revert to my trustworthy mentor in Wick Sloan, the guy who helped me with that Harvard internship. He was retired at this time, so our email exchanges, he was home. He wasn't actually a professor at the time, retired. But he was still very much active in helping vets, helping me, achieve our goals. So he ended up telling me about this program called Service to School. Never heard of it. I guess Service to School helps veterans get into school. And what was really cool about this program, I didn't know there's so many schools out there. I didn't know what to start with, where to look, even though I'm in Boston, there's so many schools around. It could be daunting. So they give you a nice list. They have like 20 partner schools that they work with. And I looked through the list, and they got a couple Ivy League schools on there, a couple public schools, some that are far away. And one really stuck out to me that I've lived in the East Coast my whole life, and I never gave too much thought to it, and that was Dartmouth. Just big green letters like this, right on the list. And I'm like, Dartmouth. I'm like, for some reason, it was like Braille. It was just sticking on the screen. And, I'm like, I got to look into the school a bit more. So I decided to give Dartmouth a call. This was the end of December 2019. And I called, and this lady named Kate Featherston picked up. And she's like, and I think she was the admissions assistant or counselor or whatever, admissions representative. And I told her right away, I didn't know bullshit. I'm like, Kate, listen, I was a heroin addict for 10 years. I've been sober for just over a year. I got good grades. Do I have a chance? You know what she told me? She told me, yes, we're very forgiving of veterans' past mistakes. That's all I needed to hear. As soon as she told me that, it was game on. It was game on. It was game on for Dartmouth and other schools. It motivated me to try again at other schools too. So my third semester at Bunker Hill started, and I started applying to all these schools. And I applied to about 18, which is a little excessive, but, law of probability. You got to increase your chances. So I didn't know how all this stuff would work out, the school stuff. I was very honest in all my admission statements. I wrote about, my past addiction and how I've conquered it so far. And I'm back in school, did a Harvard internship. I got another one for the next summer. And I wrote about all that. So I put all these applications together, not knowing what would happen. This was probably end of March 2019, beginning of April 2019, about 6 months ago. And I was very nervous. I didn't know how all that would end up. So I started getting the replies back. I'd say it was one decline after the other, one after the other, one after the other. Applied to like 5 Ivy League schools. Dartmouth was one of them. And then a bunch of public schools. I remember I only got accepted to, I think, 3 schools out of 18. And it was University of Maine, University of New Hampshire, UMass Amherst. Dartmouth ended up putting me on the wait list. Now, I, from the start, was dead set on Dartmouth, even though it's an Ivy League school. I knew my chances may be slim, but for some reason, it always stuck out to me from the very start of this process. And when I got that email saying I was on the wait list, I was devastated. I actually broke down in tears. I cried probably for 20 minutes straight. It was devastating. That was in the middle of May when I got that email. And that absolutely sucked. And so I'm like, okay, that's probably out the window, because wait list is usually you don't usually come off the wait list. So I'm like, I gotta pick a school. So, I ended up putting a deposit down for UMass Amherst. So I planned on going to UMass Amherst. And then beginning in June, first week, I think 2020, I was on a call with my mentor at my new Harvard internship, my second one, in the Department of OEB, Organismic and Evolutionary Biology. I remember very vividly, while I was talking to him, I got an email notification And you know, while he was talking, I looked at the email notification quick, and I opened it. It said Dartmouth, and then I opened it further, and it said you've been taken off the wait list and accepted. And I really can't put into words what that feeling was like. Like I cannot explain it. I was speechless. My mentor that I was talking to probably thought something was wrong with me. So I talked to me. I wasn't saying. I was like, wow, wow, that is absolutely insane. And you know, I got off the call with him, and I just took a minute to take it all in. And I just kept looking at the letter over and over to make sure there was no typos, like it really meant what it said. Couldn't believe it. And 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 I'm just like, you know what? It was almost 2 years ago that I was laying in a bed, sick, coming off heroin, and hopeless. You know, like didn't know what I was going to do myself, and thought I was a lost cause. And then I'm like, I thought about that, and I also thought about the fact that um, I went to that museum, and I thought, I'm like, man, I am so happy that I asked that guy about that bird. I just, you know, asking that guy about that bird really kicked off this whole thing for me. Yeah, unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And so yeah, now I'm at Dartmouth, and this is something I could have never predicted. It's a dream come true. I wear the shirt with pride. You know, this is I've worked hard for this, and honestly, I know I just told you guys the crazy story, but the story is really just getting started. So I'll probably be making another one of these maybe in a couple years. Tell you guys another story, but it's really just getting started. And yeah, and that's my journey to Dartmouth.